Hello servers and hi, thank you for tuning in and it's great to have you with us. Today we're talking about what is admittedly a bit of a niche topic because most of us in German-speaking countries unfortunately can't or aren't allowed to use a pressure washer and a foam lance on our own property. But nevertheless, it's an important topic, especially for all of you who use a foam lance and a pressure washer, and above all for the professional detailers among you. And it's a topic that unfortunately isn't discussed very often in our part of the world. Namely, depending on how our foam lance is designed and which pressure washer we use, the result of what ends up on the car's paintwork will be different. And we'll get right into the topic of this video. I've got a wash bucket here and it's marked with a scale. I quickly checked beforehand and this scale is fairly accurate actually. Not just fairly, it is accurate. Not down to the exact milliliter, but for what we're doing here, it's precise enough. I've got a Kärcher K7 here, which according to the manufacturer should achieve a water flow rate of 510 liters per hour. And that's the first point. The figures the manufacturers give us are always maximum values. So in the first step, we're going to check whether this maximum value is actually achieved with my Kärcher. I've already put a liter of water in here so I can insert the lance right away without everything overflowing and splashing everywhere. But let's just time it and see how much water I have in the bucket after 1 minute. So unfortunately, a bit of math is necessary here. 510 liters per hour divided by 60 equals 8.5 liters per minute. As you can see, I have a liter of water here, which I'm going to pour in now, because I hope that this will help prevent everything from splashing out everywhere. When I use the pressure washer, in a moment it should dampen it a bit. So we have this liter in there and we need to take that into account. 8.5 liters plus 1 makes 9.5. That means after 1 minute, if the Kärcher actually reaches the performance values specified by the manufacturer, we should be just below the 10 liter mark. I have a stopwatch here, which we can watch together. And now I'll really try to do this without making too much of a mess. I've already practiced a bit. Hopefully I should be able to manage it. I'll press start at the same time, and then I'll also start the pressure washer. 3, 2, 1, go. Very good. So exactly 1 minute, and as you can clearly see, we are probably at about 8 liters here. We subtract that 1 liter we already had in there before, and then we are between 7 and 7.5 liters. And that means theoretically there are 2 whole liters missing here compared to the specified water amount that the Kärcher is supposed to deliver. And that's already a factor that at the end of the day determines how much actually ends up on the paintwork of our cars. So it's not 510 liters per hour as Kärcher claims for the K7, but rather 450 to 480 liters. And that also depends, among other things, on what kind of hoses are you using here? What kind of water pressure do you have at home? How much can actually flow through there? And so on and so forth. So that's already a variable that's important here. And then, of course, the foam lance itself also comes into play. And so that we can show and examine exactly that, I have 2 different foam lances here, one from chemicalworkz and one from MTM. And now I'm going to pour exactly 1 liter of water into each of them. So I'm using the same water so that we don't waste anything here. I'm also making sure that I don't spill anything because we need to be reasonably precise here. I hope this liter will fit. Wow, that's really, really close. You know what? Let's do it a little differently because this liter doesn't quite fit in here. I'll put 800 milliliters into the foam lances. 200 A little bit has to go back. Does that fit? Very good. So 800 milliliters in the chemicalworkz foam lance. Then I get another 800 milliliters out of the bucket here. That's still a bit too much. Let's wait a moment until the water settles. Still a little too much. Very good, that's fine now. And then I'll also pour 800 milliliters into the MTM lance. This one has a smaller opening up here, so I have to be a bit more careful when pouring it in. Oops, a little bit spilled. Oops, a bit more again. I'll get just a tiny bit more. That's roughly what went wrong, and then it should be fine. So both foam lances now have 800 milliliters of water in them. Very good. We'll close everything up again. Then I'll quickly empty the bucket and pour another liter, 1 liter back into the bucket so we can take that into account later. And then we'll just use the pressure washer with the respective foam lances in here and see how many liters end up in here at the end. So I have 1 liter of water here again. Wait, there's still a bit too much in it. Good, because we'll need to subtract or account for that later. This is taking too long for me. Very good. And I have the chemicalworkz foam lance, which is still filled with those 800 milliliters of water. We don't need to time it anymore now. What we're interested in now is how much water is in this bucket at the end when the foam lance is empty. Because the following question arises. What a foam lance does is it draws the mixture you have in there out through this hose and pumps it through with the water that comes from the pressure washer itself. That means in the end, not only does this mixture end up on your paint, but also the water that comes out here. And this is what interests us now. How many liters do we have in this bucket at the end when this lance is empty? And that's exactly what we're going to do now. Put it back in and try to make sure it doesn't overflow. And you can watch along with me. I hope you can see well enough so that we notice as soon as the lance is empty. Let's start. I'll show you quickly. We are about here now. It's also important, something I forgot to mention when you do this, set the foam supply up here to maximum. There's still a little bit left in it, and we definitely had a little bit of loss as well. You saw that some of it got spread around, but we still have a good amount left here. Let's try to determine this a bit more precisely. We're clearly above the 10-liter mark. I'll try to figure it out a bit more accurately together with you. I'm taking out 1 liter. I'll set that aside for a moment. I have another liter. And now we are roughly at the 10-liter mark, just a bit above it. So let's round up or down generously. We had 12 liters in here minus the 1 liter that was left, which makes 11 liters. That means the 800 milliliter filling we had in here results in 11 liters in the wash bucket at the end. By the way, if I take a look at the foam lance here, it actually matches what we observed earlier. If I pour in 1 liter, it really is filled to the brim because the marking I see here lines up. So we had 11 liters in this bucket. We've already subtracted the liter that was already in there. We had 800 milliliters of water in here. That means the actual additional amount of water coming through here is 11 liters minus 800 milliliters, which is 10.2 liters. So what we have in here, which in most cases already diluted jets, further diluted with an additional 10.2 liters of water. Let's try to remember this number. And now we do the same experiment again with the MTM. So I have the liter of water here again. Let's pour it in right away, hoping it will make less of a mess this time. And now we'll simply do the same thing with the MTM. The foam supply is set to maximum, and let's see together what happens. So very good. I think you can already see where this is going. The water level is up here. Now let's take some out again until we reach the 10-liter mark. 1 liter. 2 liters. 3 liters. Almost. And this eyelet, let me show you here, this is now 700 milliliters. So we've taken out 3.7 liters here. There was already 1 liter in there. That means we had 10 plus 3.7, which is 13.7, minus the 1 liter that was already in there. So 12.7 liters of water passed through here. So that's already pretty exciting, isn't it? With the chemicalworkz foam lance, we had 10.2 liters that shot through. So that's really super exciting. Let's recall with the chemicalworkz foam lance, after subtracting the 800 milliliters that were in the bottle, we had 10.2 liters that flowed through. MTM foam lance, if we subtract the 800 milliliters, we end up with 11.9, which is almost 2 liters more that get shot through here with the same amount filled in the bottle. And now we're going to do the same thing again with the foam lance that we know is extremely thirsty, just to show you what that actually means. All right? The liter of water goes back in here, and I actually managed to pour in the same 800 milliliters, even though the marking here only goes up to 700 milliliters. This is the foam lance from Ava, or Ava, which comes with the Ava pressure washers. Full foam output. So let's see what comes out here. So, and remember how long it took before to get down to the lower level and how quickly it went this time. Look, it's almost empty and we're only at 5 liters. Now, yes, I think you can see it's not quite 7.5 liters. We subtract the liter that we had in there before. That means we're now at 6.5 liters here. That's half of what the MTM let through before. And I think now everyone can see that we're talking about significant differences here. And I took the mat out for you and quickly entered that into the table. Now I'll show you what that means. The chemicalworkz foam lance dilutes what's in its container here. Let me remind you, it's already diluted, and usually by a factor of 13. The MTM foam lance dilutes it by a factor of 15, but the Ava foam lance only dilutes it by a factor of 7. And that now means the following. If we want any given chemical that we're using here, a snow foam, pre-cleaner or whatever, to end up on the paintwork at a 2% concentration. So if we were to calculate it per liter, we would be talking about 20 milliliters per 1 liter of water. If we want the 2% concentration to end up on the paintwork, we would have to fill 220 milliliters into the bottle of the chemicalworkz foam lance and then top it up with water. Or, to put it another way, at a ratio of 1 to 2.6. In the MTM foam lance, we would have to use 254 milliliters, or at a ratio of 1 to 2.15. And in the Ava foam lance, by comparison, we would only need to use 130 milliliters. And that means we have a mixing ratio of 1 to 5 here. And I think now you can see what significant differences these are and what that also means for us as users. Just think about what most manufacturers typically tell us to put into the foam lances. Most of the time that's a ratio of 1 to 10, and 1 to 10 is miles away from what we would actually need with all 3 foam lances if we want to end up with a 2% concentration on the paint. I'll try to explain it to you a bit differently using a concrete example to show you just how incredibly important what we're talking about here actually is. If I mix the Sonex active foam in all 3 foam lances at a ratio of 1 to 10, that is 90 milliliters of snow foam to about 910 milliliters of water, then I have roughly a 9% solution in this bottle. And if we now look at the actual dilution factors of the foam lances, we'll find that what ultimately ends up being deposited on the paint surface is about 0.7% with the chemicalworkz foam lance, about 0.6% with the MTM foam lance, and with the EVA foam lance, it's actually, as a matter of fact, 1.3%. And I think you can imagine what that means, among other things, for the cleaning performance of such a chemical. And we all know these things here, the foam sprayers that we use at the self-service bay, because at the self-service bay, we usually can't work with a pressure washer and a foam lance. And with regard to everything I just told you, these things are at an advantage right from the start. Why? Because here we usually fill in 1 liter of water and then add the chemical. Let's say, for example, with Sonex active foam. We add the 20 milliliters and the mixing ratio we have in here is fixed. It doesn't get diluted any further. And that corresponds to a 2% solution. 20 milliliters, 1 liter of water. And just to remind you, with none of these foam lances would we reach this 2% solution if we mix everything at a ratio of 1 to 10 that actually ends up on the paint and can take effect there. And that's an incredibly important issue when it comes to the problem of dilution recommendations from manufacturers, especially for snow foams and pre-cleaners when we're talking about these foam lances. Depending on what kind of pressure washer you have and what kind of system that pressure washer is connected to. That means the topic of water pressure is also important. And depending on which foam lance you use, you'll get completely different results. And strictly speaking, if you want to use the chemicals in the correct ratio, you would have to repeat this experiment I just did here with your own pressure washer, fill it with a certain amount of water, hold it in the wash bucket, see how much comes out, calculate what the dilution ratio is, and then adjust the dosage of the chemical in this bottle accordingly, so that what ends up on the paint is actually what the manufacturer originally intended. But now, to be critical, I have to say that personally, I don't know many manufacturers who actually give us a percentage value in their dosing recommendations. Well over 90% of manufacturers simply give us a recommendation like 1 to 10 or 1 to 20. A concrete example, Sonex with their active foam in the foam lance and then dilute accordingly. So I went ahead and asked a few manufacturers, do you take this into account when you give us these dosing recommendations? And they all said yes, but actually not really. They do take it into account. And the dosing recommendation they give us is basically a kind of mixed calculation, because they know not everyone has the same pressure washer setup. But now, of course, there's another component to consider. So far, we've only talked about what actually ends up on the paintwork. We haven't yet discussed what the resulting foam looks like. And that's another topic that makes this whole thing even more complicated. And that in turn affects both the foam lance and this here. What we usually do is play around with the chemical dosages here until the foam pattern suits us. That means we adjust the dosage, which also means we're adjusting what ultimately ends up on the paintwork. And that's already fundamentally questionable, because what we should actually be doing using the foam sprayer as an example is the following. We should be asking ourselves, what dosage does the manufacturer want us to have on the paint in the end? Let's assume 2%. That would be 20 milliliters per 1 liter of water. And that's exactly what we put in here. And we leave that untouched for now. And then we play around with these different nozzle inserts. With some, like the Gloria FM10, it's installed up front here. With the Solo, you can adjust it up here using the adjustment wheel. That's also the advantage of the Solo when it comes to this whole topic. And with the IK, you can swap something out inside here. And that's actually what we should be doing. We prepare the appropriate mixture and then adjust the foam sprayer until the foam pattern is just right. It's the same issue with pressure washers and foam lances. What we should actually do is this experiment to find out how much my pressure washer and my foam lance further dilute the mixture I have in here. And then I should calculate how much chemical I need to put in here. And then, yes, that will also result in a different foam pattern. Earlier, we calculated that we need a little more than 200 milliliters of chemical in this chemicalworkz foam lance. We all know how much the Sonax active foam energy foams up, and 200 milliliters topped up with the rest to 800 milliliters of water that's much more concentrated than a 1:10 or 1:20 ratio. That means the foam lance would be completely overwhelmed, the foam would be way too thick, it would run down in clumps and it wouldn't be effective. But what we should and can do, that's exactly why those dials up there exist. We've prepared the mixture, we know that this is what ultimately ends up on the paintwork, and then we simply adjust the amount of chemical being drawn out up here. That's what this dial is for, because with it we can control the foam pattern again. This is how we should actually be doing it. If it's important to us that the chemicals landing on the paint match what the manufacturer intended here. But what we all actually do instead is adjust the dosages until we like the foam pattern. And that's really the completely wrong approach, because we should first make sure the mixing ratio is correct and only worry about the foam pattern afterwards. Now, of course, you could ask, well, how important is all of this really? And above all, you can also ask, is it even necessary? Because car care is supposed to be fun, and if what matters most to you is a nice foam pattern, then you can do whatever you like. But if what matters to us is cleaning performance, and especially with pre-cleaners and snow foams, cleaning performance is one of the main goals. I think now we can all slowly start to ask ourselves, haven't we been doing it wrong all these years? And have we also been unfair to the manufacturers? When we say that a pH-neutral snow foam doesn't clean very well, the manufacturer could respond, well, if you all chronically over-dilute it, then it can't possibly work the way I intended. A manufacturer that is absolutely exemplary in this regard is Built Hamber, an English company. For example, they provide us with the so-called PIR for snow foams and pre-cleaners, the panel impact ratio, which is, for instance, 2%. And that in turn means that each of us has to calculate what that actually means in the foam sprayer. And that's still easy. 2% of 1 liter means 20 milliliters. With the foam lance, as you've seen, it's not quite as simple anymore. I have to figure out what my pressure washer does and what my foam lance does. And only then can I calculate this 2% panel impact ratio. But strictly speaking, that's the correct approach. Because this way, the manufacturer can ensure that the mixture that ends up on the paint is always equally strong, and then you can also make sure that the cleaning performance is good. Maybe that's the reason why Built Hamber in particular is known for bringing highly effective pre-cleaners to the market. This concept of the panel impact ratio was not invented by me. It's been around for a long time. Built Hamber uses it. John from the Forensic Detailing channel, an English YouTuber, has also already shown it. Nico from Autolackaffen has pointed it out in a video before. It's nothing new, but I wanted to revisit it in this video for our community. And you can already tell this is mainly something that comes from England because, to be honest, in German-speaking countries or even among Americans, it hasn't really caught on yet. Over there and here, it's like this. The manufacturers tell us 1 to 10 in the foam lance, just do it. Very, very rarely do we find more precise instructions from manufacturers for these foam sprayers here, where they clearly tell us 20 milliliters to 30 milliliters per liter of water. Then we have a rough idea, and that's the nice thing of what the percentage solution should be that actually ends up on the paintwork. So if a manufacturer tells you, right here on the label, that we should dilute 20 to 30 milliliters of product per liter of water in the foam sprayer, then we know that the manufacturer wants the solution that ends up on the paintwork to correspond to 2 to 3%. And with that, we can then calculate what that means for our pressure washer and our foam lance. And I think that in the future, we can all use the chemicals provided by the manufacturers a bit more sensibly and a bit more effectively. But this is a topic that makes the subject of pre-washing, and especially the subject of foam, a complicated one and not a particularly simple one. And that's what I wanted to point out in this video. If you still have questions about this, feel free to ask them in the comments below and we'll try to answer them for you. But what I'd be interested to know is the following. Go ahead and write it in the comments below. Were you aware of all this? Do you say, I really don't care? All that matters to me is that I have foam on my car in the end. And do you think this could be an explanation for why we've all struggled so far to achieve proper cleaning performance, especially with pH-neutral snow foams? By the way, Sebastian already made a video where he addressed the topic of foam sprayers versus pump sprayers. The pump sprayer clearly has an advantage in all of this because there too we prepare a fixed mixture in the pump sprayer and spray it onto the paintwork, and we're not dependent on the foam consistency being right. It's simply an aqueous solution that sits on the surface. The downside is that aqueous solutions tend to dry out more quickly at high temperatures. Foam generally has a bit of an advantage in that it can stay on the paintwork and work for a longer period of time. But maybe that's a topic to consider in the future, whether a pump sprayer might actually be more practical, since you don't have to spend ages fiddling around with nozzle inserts and filter inserts to get the right foam pattern. Instead, you just mix the solution according to the manufacturer's instructions, know that it works, and then spray it onto the paint. Interesting topic, right? I think so too. And that's actually all I wanted to say about this topic. I hope your heads are spinning, because mine definitely was when I came across this subject. And I think it would be really, really exciting if we could create a dialogue out of this. If you found the video helpful, insightful, exciting, and interesting, feel free to give us a thumbs up, support the channel with a free subscription, and tune in for the next video. See you!
We'll be right back.